Salbona, and welcome to lesson 408. I know that I said in the 400 series that I would alternate back and forth, even and odd, between Kikuma and Hebrew Bantu. But even though this is an even number, I'm going to go ahead and base the information around Kikuma because of what I'm going to call the main course and the dessert type of lesson. Main course being the second portion of the lesson that I feel is something that we all need to know and take a look at to correct some of the improper and incorrect information that's being passed around, even by great scholars that we all grew up studying. And the dessert portion, which is what I'm going to use first, going against most of our upbringing. I'm going to do the dessert portion first because it's something that's to my personal preference because of things that I do in my own personal life. I know most of you, if any of you, might not know this about me, but I raise snakes. I raise boa constrictors. And for all of you black folks out there saying that you're scared of snakes, get a white man his Bible back and get back to being yourself. But in doing so, in the raising of them, I want to make sure that I know as much as I can. So I've done a lot of studying over the course of the time that I've kept them. And one thing that kept popping up that I found was the enigma behind the word anaconda. Now, that word anaconda, or that animal that we relate to as an anaconda in South America right now, originally was not called anaconda. See, that's another case of white folks taking somebody else's words and doing whatever the hell they want to do with it. But that snake that we now associate with anaconda was called Sukudiyuba by the autochthonous people on those lands. So anaconda actually came from what many believe to be Sri Lanka and other places over near the Indian Ocean and the tip of India. Now, they have theories. And like Malcolm said, if you want to understand the white man and what he's doing, you study his dictionary. So if you look up the word anaconda in any dictionary, you'll find these theories about how the name originated in the so-called Indo-European languages. You'll take note that that's where all of their languages stop when it goes back to the etymology of their words. But if you look at any of the so-called etymological origins of anaconda, they will all say possibly or unknown or of mysterious origin or something like that. But basically what they're saying is they don't know where the word came from. So anytime they're telling you that they don't know where a word came from, you know it came from home. So take it straight back to home. I guarantee you'll find the origin of that word because the protocol is to make sure they never give you credit for anything. So I want to base the first part, the dessert portion of the lesson, on the word anaconda. And the second part, which is the meat portion or the main course portion, I'm going to call it, it's going to be about the word Egypt and we're going to take some further looks into the word and show how this so-called Aegyptos and Het-ka-Ptah and all of that kind of stuff might have come about and the actual origin of the word from what I found. So anyway, on with the dessert. Now, the word anaconda, spelled Anaconda. The anaconda that we know now, Sukudiyuba, is actually the largest boa constrictor in the world. But that word was not originally applied to a boa in South America. It was originally applied to a python. There was no specific python, most likely a reticulated or a berm or a rock or something like that. Some of the larger 25, 30, 40-foot snakes. And so when we look at the origin of what they say the word is supposed to come from, one of the theories is that it comes from the Sinhala word Anaconda. And even though this is not even a word, as far as my knowledge, in the Sinhala language, they say Anaconda means a whip snake or a lightning rod. And it also means a very thin snake. So if we look at the so-called anaconda, we know it is one of the most girthy snakes in the world. When you look at the build of the width of the snake, the muscular mass, I mean, per square inch or per square foot, I think the only snakes that may have more girth is a gaboon viper and maybe a blood python. So the anaconda is actually one of the thickest snakes in the world. So it's no possible way that it could be called a thin whip snake. So then another one of their Indo-European theories says it comes from the Tamil word that is supposed to be Yanai or Yanakondran. And Yanai means elephant, and Kondran has something to do with killing. So they're saying that it comes from the word or a phrase to say the one that killed an elephant. And it will make sense, and I appreciate them at least giving some kind of colored folks some credit for something being Tamil. But Yanai is also not the proper origin of the word. So if we bring it back home, the word for snake most often is people see as naga or anaga and stuff like that. But the word that really predates all of those in the Bantu language is nyoka. 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 And that word means snake. So when we look at nyoka, we find it in isiZulu, we find it in Kiswahili, and, so it's just a plethora of languages with the word, knowing that it is one of the most common words and one of the most universal words in Bantu. So then we look at the word anda. The word anda in isiZulu means something that is of great size, something that is multiplied, and something of many births. It is increased by birth. We're looking at something that increases, whether it'll be by physical size or by number. So what we're actually looking at when we look at the word anaconda is Nyokanda. Nyokanda in the Bantu language, and specifically isiZulu. And what that means is the snake that is enlarged and has many at birth. Well, we look at the Nyokanda, and it actually is a very large snake. And then we look at how it gives birth. Boa constrictors in particular give live birth. They give litters, so they increase at birth. If we go back to where the word originally was used, on the so-called reticulated python, Burmese pythons, rock pythons, and whatnot, these large pythons, the concept is still the same. Instead of giving litters, these snakes lay clutches, which are eggs, but still they increase by birth. So the original usage of the word is still correct, even though it was applied to the wrong animal by travelers and white folk. So if we look at in Kiswahili, now this is just a possibility, and I like to throw information out there so we could take a look further into it. This is just a possibility that I'm throwing out. The word Anaconda in Kiswahili means a fish that is dried in the sun. Even though this is a long stretch, I'm going to go ahead and state my rationale and why I'm saying this. Now, I can rationalize this by saying that if we look at the largest snakes, and as a matter of fact, all the largest animals in the world, for that matter, they're either aquatic or they're semi-aquatic. We have the whales, we have sharks, manta rays, man-o'-wars, the condas, all of these large animals. Even they told you the largest dinosaurs lived underwater. The reason why that is the case is because only the density of water can allow such a large, massive animal to maneuver and survive, whether getting away from predators or whether trying to find food. They will be too cumbersome at that size on land because of their mass. So moving around will be a big problem for them, and they will be easy targets for things that want to eat them. So the blue whale and all these large animals all live in the ocean because they also tell you there's more water than it is on land. There's more water on the planet than land. If we look at the conda and these large pythons and boas that we're talking about, they're no different. The largest ones are either aquatic or semi-aquatic. If we see an animal of that size coming out of the water, because snakes being ectotherms like all reptiles, ectotherm meaning heat from without. They can't produce their own heat, so they have to have heat from without. So they do what you call basking, and they bask on rocks, they bask on sand, they bask on areas that have absorbed heat from the sun, and this helps with their digestion. So if it comes out of the water and is seen coming out of the water to bask, then what it looks like is a fish coming out of water that is being dried in the sun. Now, I know that Anaconda oftentimes applies to food and how you prepare fish by drying, but if you look at the overall concept, it's still the same concept. It's the fish coming out of water, which is a water-living animal, coming onto dry land to bask, which is drying in the sun. You understand? So, as I said, that may be a long shot because, Kiswahili being Bantu at its root is still not as old as the Nguni Bantu languages. So I will still go back to defer to say Anaconda, which is the snake that is enlarged and has many at birth. The isiZulu form is still the origin of the word anaconda. Now, if we look at in the Hebrew Bantu language, we can still see the same word. As I said, the Hebrew word nagash, as it's called, or as you know about the Ethiopian Bible, Kibra Nagas, they call it Nagast. Some say that is rooted in the word nun, het, shin in Hebrew, which is supposed to be nagash, to mean snake. But it also refers to divination, because as we know, when you put that Bible down, we already knew that the snake represented divination all throughout the world to our people. And if you look on the statues, pick your favorite statue over in Chikoma and you'll see the snake right on their foreheads. So in dealing with the concept of divination, we have to understand why the snake was so important to us. And it is even said in many of the legends or mythologies of our people, especially, throughout the East Coast of Congo, that the snake represented everlasting life, because once it shed its skin, of course, it has a new shine. It has a new life. It has a new look. Any scars that it may have had are also gone for the most part. And after so many sheds, it actually loses deep scars. So it's like it's regenerating itself. So we knew this concept all throughout the planet. Only the people who wanted us to go against that, taught us to do otherwise after we got here. But go back to Nagash, okay? Nagash, from what I see, is actually broken down into two words. Nun het, which is the nyoka, and the sheen at the end, which in my thought process here is actually sheen aleph he, which is shah. Shah means to stand gazing at something. So if we look at where the so-called Hebrew religion and everything came from, the origin of Abraham is actually, the word Abraham is a juxtaposition of the word Brahma. So we take about the Brahma and we're looking at North Indians. So the North Indians did what? They lived amongst the cobra. And the cobra, it sits in a gaze stare while it's coiled up and around. So when we look at nyoka, being snake, and we look at shah, which means to stand gazing, then nyokasha means the snake that stands gazing. Then from that point on, if we look at the anda, in the Hebrew Bantu language, the word spelled Ain Nun Dalit, anda, actually means to wind around or to coil about. So if we look at the whole word together, we're looking at Nyokashanda, which means the snake that stares gazing while it's coiled about. This is the same thing as far as the concept of a large snake that is being, revered by the people who have lived amongst it. So the concept is still the same, even when you add shah, because you can take off shah, the root nyoka is still there, and you still get Anaconda, which means the snake that is coiled about. Same word. So that's the dessert portion of the lesson. Now I want to go ahead and jump into the main course.